In order to make a real change to the world in general, or on a more micro level, your own lives, you've got to have that attitude. If you're terrified of what people think of you, if you post something online or if you speak your mind in a conversation, then you're not really free for a start. You're just kind of a perceptual prisoner for whatever is acceptable at the time. I mean, I'd actually conclude that most people don't have any original thoughts whatsoever. And
Yeah,
if you ask them to break down why they believe what they believe, or why they reacted the way they reacted to whatever given situation, they probably don't have many answers to give you, I don't think.
no.
Because it's almost like you're a character in the computer game where someone else is pressing the controller and you're just living it out, which I think, again, that describes probably most people. Imagine if kids were taught that. They'd grow up wide-eyed, they'd grow up emboldened that they can do something with their lives, and I think just that changing that thing alone would give people so much more empowerment to go out and live their lives very differently. If you look at who is doing or saying something before deciding whether you support or oppose it, for me that's you've lost control of your mind at that point.
So, a big welcome back to the Live, Love, Learn and this latest episode of my Deprogrammed series, peeling back the layers of conditioning that keep us sick, stuck, and silent so we can reclaim our health, freedom, and true power. And today I'm joined once again by the brilliant Jaymie Icke. This is a really raw, powerful conversation about why most of us don't have a single original thought, why discipline and self respect are the missing links in personal change and parenting, and why division, even in the so called truth movement, is being weaponized to keep us weak. Jaymie shares what it's really like growing up in the Icke family, why the system is collapsing from the inside out, and some really practical advice about what each of us can actually do to take back control today. So, whether you're a parent, truth seeker, or just someone trying to make sense of this crazy world, please don't miss this one. And please help me keep these conversations going. Hitting the subscribe button, leaving a comment, or sharing this episode with a friend really helps. And if you're listening on the podcast platform, a quick review really helps me reach more people and keep bringing amazing guests like Jaymie. So thanks so much, and let's get to it. Right, welcome back to the Live, Love, Learn podcast and my latest episode of Deprogrammed, where we're looking at peeling back the layers of conditioning that help us reclaim our health, freedom, and true power. And today, by very popular demand, I have got Jaymie Icke back again, someone who's not only grown up around radical truth seeking, but has very much carved his own path as a speaker, creator, and disruption of illusions. Jaymie is the MD of Iconic, a groundbreaking media platform dedicated to uncovering the stories and perspectives mainstream outlets often ignore or are not allowed to talk about. And he's also the host of The Health Code, a movement empowering people to reclaim control of their health and physical well-being. A father, truth teller, and certainly someone who looks behind the curtains and chooses not to look away. So, Jaymie, I mean, you've got a very interesting background and line of work. We can't ignore the fact that you've grown up with David as your father. Let's just start with how has that shaped your mission and what you really focused on today?
Well, from a very young age, I was always taught that, you should follow your dreams and your aspirations, and you shouldn't sort of settle for I guess the program of, you're essentially just that you're at school to get an education, to then go to work somewhere, to then pay taxes, pay, but all that. I was always taught from a younger age that, you could do more than that and achieve more than that. And I was very much into sport, and I was quite a good young athlete. I was at Manchester United till I was about 16 years old at football. And I really thought for a long time that was going to be my career. I was going to be in football. And even when I stopped playing, I thought I'd be involved in sport in some capacity, whether that's, coaching, an agent, in television, something. And it was really my early 20s when I first really got interested in this information, to the point that I started writing, speaking, and reading a lot more. I traveled around the world with my dad from 2015 onwards, organizing his events all across the world, and got an incredible insight into just how many of us there are for a start out there that are very unhappy at the status quo and want to do something about it, and how that this reaches, the far ends of the world. You go to, the far end of Australia and have 3,000, 4,000 people in a room, and it was very that was very, promising and very exciting. And ever since then, I've just been doing more reading, researching, finding more topics to learn about, talk about. And I think we're at a point now where more people are interested in this than ever before. So I see, the next few years as a massive, massive opportunity. And my dad was a massive influence, of course. And one of the biggest things he gave me was just the ability to always question, always be able to pursue what you want to pursue. And I think that the biggest one is the no holds barred attitude that you don't apologize for being yourself. You will always have the self-assurance and self-respect to speak your mind. And that's something that as I've got older, I've really appreciated and really cherished that was kind of drummed in so young. And I'm trying to do the same things with my children as well, because I think that's so important.
It's so important. I didn't realize you'd done all that with your dad's tour and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, you touched there on something that I think is one of the major issues that hold people back is having the confidence to go against the grain and stand up. And obviously, there's often a lot of ridicule, real nastiness that goes with that. How do you cope with all that?
Well, I think I feel like I had it easier in a weird way because I got a load of stick at school, as did Gareth, as did Kerry, through nothing we'd done. We were getting stick on behalf of things that Dad had written about, that parents were talking about, things like the Wogan interview and others. So you were kind of not trying to defend yourself, but you were getting abuse and ridicule for something you hadn't done. I'll be honest, in those days when I was like 10, 11, 12, too young to really understand why I was getting ridiculed anyway. So that kind of got me used to being a bit of an outcast, a bit of an outsider. And as a result, when I started to talk about things myself, it didn't really bother me. Like I don't have a real care of what anybody thinks. I've got a lovely family, beautiful wife, two kids. As long as they're happy and they're happy with who I am, then I don't really care about the outside noise. And I think in order to make a real change to the world in general, or on a more micro level, your own lives, you've got to have that attitude. If you're terrified of what people think of you, if you post something online or if you speak your mind in a conversation, then you're not really free for a start. You're just kind of a perceptual prisoner for whatever is acceptable at the time. And because throughout generations, things that are acceptable change, you don't really have an opinion. You just flow with whatever's going. I think that's really sad. I think that's what most people do now. Things when I was a kid that you'd talk about, if you talked about now, I mean, even when I was a kid, 10, 15 years ago, the whole concept of men in women's sports, for example, it
Yeah.
would have been an absolute joke. And now all of a sudden, you got kids that are terrified to speak about it when all that's changed is that that's become acceptable when it doesn't mean it's right. So I would say that is as you pointed out, one of the biggest things that needs to change is you need to understand that you're the one in control of your life. And if you're not deciding for yourself what you think, what you say, how you behave, you're doing it based on what's socially acceptable or what you think your friends or your family or your partner will accept, then you're not living your own life. You're letting someone else live it. And I'd say that describes most people, unfortunately, which is a massive, massive problem. And I think part of the reason that we are in the mess we are in is that what is considered acceptable is generally not what is right.
It's so true. There's so much I want to pick up on that. I mean, in this Deprogram series, one of the things I'm really fascinated about is how beliefs get implanted in us, often without our conscious awareness. And, there's a lot of talk about the mass programming and hypnosis. What have you learned? I mean, one, through all the experiences and the knowledge and going on tour with your dad, but also you're in the media now with Iconic that you run with Gareth, which is a fantastic platform. If anyone hasn't joined that yet, please do. So much information on there. But what have you learnt, Jaymie, about this, perhaps the difference between the mass programming, the hypnosis that more people are more familiar with, and how they're still getting away with it? with, so many of us aren't even aware of what our belief systems are or where they've come from or if they're even ours.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually conclude that most people don't have any original thoughts whatsoever. And
Yeah,
if you ask them to break down why they believe what they believe, or why they reacted the way they reacted to whatever given situation, they probably don't have many answers to give you, I don't think.
no,
Because, it's, well, that's just what everybody does, or that's what everybody thinks. Everybody knows that. Really basic, simple things that you'll ask a simple question and get, well, everybody knows that's the case. Like, yeah, but have you ever actually looked into it for yourself? Ever actually thought slightly deeper than just that superficial level of that's that? Because, with what you do as well with health, so many health taboos where, oh, everyone
yeah,
knows that, when in fact they're actually completely wrong. But because it's become so accepted and it's everybody knows that and people don't question it, I think it comes down personally to a form of self-respect where, for me, if I'm going to believe something and therefore based on that belief I'm going to behave in a certain way, I'm going to spend my money on something, I'm going to not spend it somewhere, I'm going to make friends with this person, don't like that person, whatever, all based on whatever the belief might be, then that belief's got to be based on something I've looked into myself. Because if you don't do that, because of the way the system is built, whether that's the education system, the media system, the health industries, it will tell you what to think about different situations, about different people, about different countries, different products, different whatever. So unless you have the self-respect, in my opinion, to actually go, well, thanks for that, but I'm going to look into this myself. I'm going to make a decision based on what I think, how I feel. Um, then you're just a bit of a robot. It's almost like you're a character in the computer game where someone else is pressing the controller and you're just living it out. Which I think, again, that describes probably most people. I think when you've got a society as we have, and this is internationally really, where people will ignore their own, maybe their own thoughts deep down, their own feelings within their body, to do whatever is socially acceptable, or to do what somebody else tells them. They will ignore that voice. You can apply that to so many things. How many people ignore things about their health because their doctor tells them everything's fine, but it's like, well, actually it's not because I feel like crap, or vice versa. Maybe you feel great and they tell you to stop doing something. Or how many people through that COVID era ignored their own eyes to listen to what the media were telling them?
yeah,
I think again that comes down to self-respect. It has to come down there, and I think it's such a big story when you encompass it all, and that starts at the education system where we are conditioned to believe that essentially we are just a very small, insignificant part of something grand. When what if kids were taught actually you're a very significant part of something grand. You're part of something, life's tapestry that is bigger than us. It's bigger than any one of us that is here today. It goes generations to come and generations that have gone, and this consciousness is gonna be around forever, and we're having a sort of momentary part of it. But that matters. That's something of significance, and you can make a contribution to that. Imagine if kids were taught that. They'd grow up wide-eyed. They'd grow up emboldened that they can do something with their lives, and I think just that changing that thing alone would give people so much more empowerment to go out and live their lives very differently. Whereas I think when you start at such a young age, like 5 years old in schools, conditioning kids basically that this is what you need to do to survive, this is what you need to do to get by. And most of them are basically say this, say that, stay in line, don't get outside your box, don't get ideas above your station, and just
yeah,
you'll get on with life. Get married, have some kids, maybe if you're lucky enough, have a few years at the end. And I just think it starts so young, and that's why when people ask what's the problem with the system, it's so difficult because it starts, it has different stages almost, doesn't it? It starts very young, it gets you into a certain mindset, and then the rest of it just builds layers and layers and layers upon that, and you end up with adults that are the type of people that we're describing that just follow the person in front when it comes to their opinions, what they believe, what they don't, what they care about, what they support. And unfortunately, that is why we have ended up in the mess that we are in. And unless that changes, I don't see that mess turning around. I think a real perceptual reset is what needs to happen. And it needs to start with kids. That's why I think we spoke
yeah,
about this last time. The generations now are the most perceptually targeted of in history, whether that be through technology, whether that be through, things like violent video games, the Instagram filter life. This is how you must look. This is how you must speak. You've got to have five Bugattis and a mansion in Dubai or you're a failure. That sort of sales pitch, I think they've been targeted so much. And I think it's very important that we talk about this kind of information, of course, and we speak to people that are really interested in listening, but we also try and get this in front of younger people. I think that's incredibly important to making any kind of change because they're the adults of tomorrow at the end of the day.
I couldn't agree more. There's so many important things you said there. And, the fact of the matter is, I mean, my children are grown up now, they're in their 20s, but children do what you do, not what you say.
Yeah.
So we have to take accountability. And I'd love your opinion about, yes, on one respect, I completely agree with there's so many influences on our children now that certainly I never had when I was growing up. I'm so old, we didn't have computers, we didn't have mobile phones or anything. So I was very, very lucky. But I'd love your opinion on, you've mentioned it a few times, the discipline and the self-accountability, particularly for those of us that are parents, but even if you're not a parent, for how you conduct yourself in the world. Because my view, rightly or wrongly, is that we've got to examine all these things, which I want to come on to a bit more with you. But once you know it, you then have a choice about whether you stay in that system or not. And I think a lot of people are stuck in this victim cycle. I mean, as a holistic health professional, and I know you're passionate about this, Jaymie, I get from all my science friends, well, show me the double blind placebo study
Yeah.
on this. And it's just like, how do you think that we can get away from that sort of attitude? Because it's just a deflection, it's just a defense mechanism. But also for those people that are parents that are watching this, to really take that responsibility so seriously and still realize that the most dominant influence on your children can be you in the home still.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to role models. And I think your children's biggest role model, whether you've got sons or you've got daughters, should be you, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You know, and I don't agree with Andrew Tate on basically anything, but he said something I remember a while ago, which is that as a dad, if your son looks at superheroes on the telly as the superheroes, then you've kind of failed a little bit. And I kind of agree with that concept, maybe not quite as extreme as he's put it, but to an extent that I think the kids today have, as you say, so many influencers online, and it's very difficult as a parent, I understand, to monitor that, and very difficult to monitor what they're seeing and what they're reading and the type of content they're hearing.
Yeah.
But I think if you are, living the life that you want them to live. So let's say, I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience having two boys. You know, I train every day. I look after myself. I eat really well, play lots of sport, really hands-on with the kids. We play rough and tumble. We're out and about. We play football training with MMA, lots of different things that are very active and very physical. As soon as the sun is anything like out, we're outside, we're in the garden playing basketball, we're in the street scooting around, whatever. Um, because they're not just seeing, I guess, seeing me say this is how you should be. They're seeing me then live it as well. You know,
Yeah.
we'll come and train in the gym together in the garage. We'll do some running around in all those things that I talk about doing. They do it with me. We'll make homemade food together and stuff. And I think being setting that example is the key. I think what a lot of and I'd say I don't mean to say this having a go at parents. 'Cause I don't think it's as simple as that. But I think modern society with the technology, it's allowed parents to be quite lazy because
Yes.
parents can use technology as essentially a free babysitter. Hand the
Yeah.
kid an iPad and I can get on with my life. They're not bothering me, and that's how a lot of parents see it. Some through they'll argue through necessity that they have to work and they don't have the time and energy to do things. Another one is the convenience of really quick food. They can do that rather than put time and energy into cooking with their children and for the family. But I actually look at that and think, well, as a parent, not only is your kid not getting the best of you, you're missing out so much on basically the real, reasons you became a parent, which is to cherish and share those incredible moments with your kids.
Oh,
Like
so
for
true.
me, I get up and go before my kids are awake Monday to Friday. So when the weekend comes and usually my oldest son Travis gets up first and he'll come and wake me up and be like, "Can we go and play some races he loves cars. We've got like racetracks downstairs, and like that hour in the morning that you don't get in the week, that to me is just amazing. And I feel like so many people miss out on those moments because essentially the technology and other things has allowed parents to be relatively lazy and almost do it on autopilot. So that's something I would say that we need to change is strip that back and get back to old-fashioned styles of parenting where you actually really talk to your children, you engage
Yeah.
with them, you ask them about their day, you are really and genuinely be interested in what they have to say because you know now my kids are at school, the stories they come home with, they're just incredible, they're hilarious, and you just sat at the dinner table hearing what they've been up to, and it's I feel those sort of things are very, very important because that, for a start, is a very different relationship between the child and an adult. Because at school, it's very much, unless you're in a, an alternative school, let's say, if you're in a mainstream school, the adult is the authority figure, the
Yeah.
kid is not. Whereas at home, when you engage and speak to your kids like, they're your equals, they're adults, you're having an actual
Mm.
conversation with them. I think that's really important for their development as well. And they're going to learn a lot of life skills from that. But I think going back to the start of my answer, I think role models is the key. I think if your kid's role model is someone online, then I think you're not doing your job properly. I really do. And of course, we're always going to have influencers. I remember when I was a kid, everyone wanted to be David Beckham.
Yeah.
Every lad had a haircut like David Beckham. I remember my mum coming home going, "I want the Mohican," and she was like, "No way, you're having that." But on the flip side, your dad was the most important man in your life and the most important person you looked up to and listened to, and your mum is who you learned from. Um, all those important life skills. And I think me and my wife are on the same page on this, very much aligned. And we always say that, I want my two boys to learn how to behave from seeing how I behave. I want them to learn how to treat a woman from seeing see how I treat Beth. What a healthy relationship is from seeing us. And I think that's really, really important. I think as a parent, you have so much responsibility that it's actually, I think, very important sometimes just to sit back and evaluate. Actually, this is really important. I'm not going to mess this up. I'm going to give this everything. And the decisions I make and the way I behave and the things I say to my children are very important for the way that they then develop. These foundational years in particular. And I would say, again, just because that's my only experience, particularly fathers and sons, I would say,
Mm.
because we do have a generation of quite of a masculinity crisis. That is why figures like Andrew Tate have got such popularity because as much as I don't like him or agree with 99% of what he says, he fills a void that isn't there. Um, so I would say that fathers and sons are a massively important relationship. And, if we want to have a generation of people that are open-minded, free-thinking, and, taking life a bit more seriously, where they have the self-respect to find out and figure out things for themselves, then it's important that we fill these people with we fill these gaps in a sense with positive role models because at the moment if you look on social media now your role model for a lad is Andrew Tate, your role
Yeah.
model for a woman you're seeing are people like Bonnie Blue. I mean,
Oh,
they're the people that are
yeah.
getting pushed, the algorithms, they're the things that are, being seen everywhere. Like I don't follow either of those two, but I go on Instagram and I know within the first 5 or 6 posts you're going to see something from one of them. They're being promoted on purpose to you know to idealize that sort of situation. Young girls are probably looking at. I got shown a video the other day by someone. Young girls are probably looking at these videos of Bonnie Blue with a brand new Ferrari, going, "Well, hang on, she's done this, and look what she's
Yeah.
got." And they're looking at that with an aspiration. Same with people like Tate. I've 10 cars and a house in Dubai and all of that. So I think it's very important that parents take more responsibility for the education and the nurturing aspect of their kids. Because I think if you want to, you can just leave it to the state. The state will educate them through the school system, and technology and social media will bring them up if you leave them to do it. So I think it's very important parents are more hands-on. That was very long-winded, sorry, but that
No, I just couldn't agree more with you. And certainly from my point of view, I mean, I would do things differently now. I mean, my children, I must say, they are just the most incredible young adults I've ever met. I mean, I spent thousands on coaches over the years, and I can learn more from my children. They're just born with this level of innate wisdom. And I can always remember my son, even as a toddler, I'm a herbalist, and I didn't teach him any of this. He knew which things he could eat in the world and which things he couldn't. He knew which were good for him at certain times. It was incredible. There's no rational way to explain that, but this innate ability and this innate connection. And
Well, that's an argument that people can say is that kids are actually born with everything they already need, and
exactly.
it's conditioned out of them. You know, they're actually born with that spiritual connection. They're born with that wonder. They're born with that imagination, and we condition and educate it out of them. And
Yeah, it's so true, and I can see that, in hindsight a lot. I mean, they've still turned out very, very well, but hindsight is an amazing thing. And if any young parents are watching this now, those years are so important and so precious because it's such a
100%.
cliche, but they do go so, so quickly. Um, and one of the things that I think I wanted to ask you about, particularly Jaymie, is with your daily show trending and the work that you do, you're very immersed in what's going on and what we're all being told. And I'd love to know what you're seeing at the moment. Going back to the theme of programming, where are you seeing some of the biggest programs that are still being thrown at us on all sides? Because I think sometimes the alternative media like to think they're superior and are not subject to this programming, but you certainly cover a lot of stuff on your shows that show that we certainly are, and often worse than the normies.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that we approach everything with is that whatever we know or think we know, it's always open to being changed based on new information, and it's also we never ever conclude that we know everything because you
Yeah,
don't. I would say quite conservatively that we probably know less than 1% of what there is to know about everything, reality, life, afterlife, everything. So with that mindset, you're always open to new information. Doesn't mean you believe everything by reflex action, but you're open to it, at least you don't dismiss it. And and if that's the case, you can always be quite light on your feet with new events and with new happenings and go around and highlight different things. Whereas I feel the alternative media in general, different people focus on different things. So there's a big, obviously, political element to it that are obsessed with, Donald Trump, Reform UK. They're going to be the ones that change the game. And look at it from that perspective, but don't go to that next level of, okay, well, if we think there's a deep state behind, then do you not think they control them as well? And who are those people and their influence? Um, you've got a very big religious aspect to it now, who
yeah,
have come in the last few years with Christianity and Catholicism again being very prevalent. Um, and you've got, I would actually, to be honest, I would actually put the woke mindset in that category as well, because I actually don't think the mindsets that we have and the mindset they have is that different. I
yeah,
think we would actually find if we sat down and the shouting stopped, we agree with a lot more than we disagree with on, because we very much agree that the world is not going in a good direction. We just disagree as to what the causes of that and what the solution of that is. But the fact that we believe that something is not going in the right direction, that's a starting point that I think we can build upon. And when you talk about the alternative being superior, I completely agree in the sense of that people talk about people waking up, the world changing, X, Y, and Z. But on the flip side, there's a lot of division
yeah,
that
oh,
is
yeah,
sowed from people within the alternative media. Whereas I look at it from this perspective. I said this to my brother last week actually. So I think we need to run whatever we're running and try and reach people and run this like a political campaign in the sense of, and what I mean by that is this: if you're a politician and you're trying to win, the only way you win is you get people that didn't vote for you last time or don't know who you are to vote for you. And in order to do that, you've got to go to the people who don't know you or don't agree with you. You've got to go there first. You've got to get them to listen to your ideas, listen to what you're talking about. Whereas I think with the alternative, there's a lot of preaching to the converted. That's a big part. And I understand that. I understand that. And there's also a lot of I don't want to engage with them. They're crazy. These guys are mental. These are this. There's that. Well, those people are never going to listen to you if that's how you're talking about them and to them.
yeah,
You can think that, absolutely. But I look at somebody who, is chucking orange paint onto a building, tying themselves to a bridge because of Just Stop Oil. I actually feel really sorry for them because they've just been
absolutely.
programmed and conditioned and brainwashed to believe something. So I actually look at that, they're not the people at the top that know full well what they're doing and are manipulating the people that are, actually doing the stuff like that. Um, But for most of them, I just look and think, look, we'd agree on a hell of a lot if we just put
Yeah,
some fault lines down, sit down, have a cup of tea, and have a conversation about things. We'd probably agree with a hell of a lot. And things that concern you probably concern me, and vice versa. We need to reach that common ground where we can argue about the fine detail later, but we can all agree right now something needs to change. And unless we do that in some form of unity, we're never going to change it. We're just going to be on the outside, always shouting in. So I'd say that's a big thing with the alternative media, where it can be quite preachy that, we see through this, you didn't. So I find this with people who have started speaking out now who maybe had vaccine injuries and things like that,
yeah,
and you get the comments and it's like, oh well, you're an idiot, you didn't see that 5 years ago. It's like, okay, well, they see it now though, and that's
yeah.
great because that's another person on the ladder. It's like, if you saw someone homeless walk into a job centre, would you tell them to fuck off? No, you wouldn't. You'd be like, fantastic, in you come. If you see someone overweight walking into a gym, you're not going to say, what are you doing here? You're going to say, great, you're making a change. That's great to see. Whereas I think a lot of the alternative, it's almost like it's a little clique and they want it to be their thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas for me, I don't care who changes the world, really. I just hope that we change it for the better. And if I can be a part of that, great. If I'm not, but someone else does it better, and it means my kids have a better future, equally as good. But I think very few can say that. A lot of people want the credit, they want the kudos, they want the fame, the acclaim, the money, whatever that comes with being that. So I'd say that's a big, big thing, is that lack of unity. If we were to change that and the egos all got put down, I mean, I said years ago, I think there's more egos and snakes in the alternative media than the mainstream one because at least in the mainstream they don't really hide it.
Oh, completely. I mean, I've been really shocked about that. And it's one of the things I appreciate so much about what you do, Jaymie, and I genuinely mean this, is the fact that for someone so young, showing my age now, you've got an amazing ability to articulate yourself without getting over emotional about it. And I think we've been taught, I mean, look at the people that in Parliament. I mean, if anyone's ever watched that on TV, the way they speak to each other, what
Yeah.
a disgusting example. As you say, you're talking about people like Andrew Tate. It's all high volume, high energy bullying tactics. Even though some of the things he says I do actually agree with, I must
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, there's a
But not
percentage.
all of them. And so there's a couple of questions in there. Is like, what advice from what you've learned can you be that you can still be passionate about something and talk about it in an empathetic and respectful way? And secondly, someone like Andrew Tate, we both brought him up because everyone knows about him, is that you don't have to agree with everything that everyone says. I mean, I grew up in a time where friends, well, I've never once discussed anyone's political affiliation with them. And it's only since I've started speaking to so many people in America that comes into every conversation about, oh, well, they're a Republican and I still speak to them or that. And like, where's that even matter?
Yeah.
Why is that even part of the conversation? So, how you speak to people, how people can learn those skills again, because I think they've been lost. And also, how it's not important to agree with every single thing that someone says. And actually, if you don't, you might learn something from them.
100%. Well, that one's a great place to start because I think when you believe and invest in someone or something, whether that's a political party, a political candidate, an influencer, whatever, to the point that you're like all in, for me, you've lost it because you're all of a sudden you're not objective anymore
Yeah,
because you will agree and justify things they say that actually you disagree with, and if somebody else had said it, you'd call it out. But because you've kind of gone all in, so you could apply that to now. If with what Donald Trump is doing, if Kamala Harris was doing the same thing, the MAGA lot would be calling it out. They'd be saying this is disgusting, that's outrageous. But because they think their side's winning,
yeah,
then they're silent. Um, so that's a really big point. I think you need to, in order to have a situation where you're constantly objective, you need to look at behavior, not who's doing it.
yeah,
If you look at who is doing or saying something before deciding whether you support or oppose it, for me that's you've lost control of your mind at that point. You have to look at behavior and you can apply that to pretty much everything. There'll be people out there that are saying what Russia are doing in Ukraine is disgusting, but championing that Israel are doing that in Gaza. You can't do that. War and killing is wrong or it's right. You can't have it either way. You have to pick one. So I'd say that's a big point. And I think pretty much everybody has something to say of validity. It might be 1% of what they say or less. And I think if you just look at that and listen to what they say, and if you agree with it, great. You don't have to agree with the other 99% of what they say. And there's so many people you could apply that logic to. Tommy Robinson would be another
Yeah.
one. Andrew Tate obviously is a big one. There's so many people out there that have said some things over the years that you look at and go, I can agree with that.
Mm.
But I also disagree with a load of X, Y, and Z that you have to say. You know, my brother always used to make this joke about, there used to be the saying about Hitler used to love fine art. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I like art as well. Don't agree with all of that. You can kind of, but I think people have become so invested in jumping all in on a person or a party or a movement rather than just looking at everything dispassionately of, I agree with that, I agree with that, I agree with that. And I think that again is part of the reason the world is the way it is because there's this whole perception, I think, that the newest idea or the freshest idea is the best idea. Well, in fact, it probably take a bit of that one, 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 and form that together to have a completely new idea based on the best bits of each one, and you might have something good. And I think you could apply that to the next best thing, the new person who's going to come and save the day, the new party, the new movement, the new influencer. When you could probably look and go, a bit of what you say I agree with, a bit of what you say I agree with, and merge that together, and you've probably got a pretty good opinion there. Um, but people just seem so invested in having to jump in on one particular person, and they'll defend that person even when they disagree with them, and they will oppose somebody else even though that person might be saying something that you agree with, but you can't agree with them because it's them. I think that's a massive, massive problem and a massive thing that needs to change. And on the other question, in terms of how to articulate how you feel, I think that has to come back to again self-respect, which is that
Yeah.
if your opinion is your opinion, then you have every single right to speak it and to unapologetically be yourself. And if other people don't like that, as long as you're not, imposing your will upon somebody else and uh, being physically violent towards somebody else, imposing yourself and intimidating people, obviously, then who are they to tell you what you should think, what you should believe, how you should behave? And that goes for everyone, whether that's your parents, whether that's your friends, whether that's your partner. Because if you've got people around you that only accept you because your opinions align with theirs, and if you were your real self, they wouldn't accept you, they're not your friends. They're plastic friends.
We've all found that out, haven't we, over
Yeah, you
the
have.
past few
They're
years? Yeah.
they're plastic friends, and they're people who you, you know, are only really in your life because it suits them.
Yeah.
I think and I think a lot of people can probably relate to this in the last 5 years is when you're yourself, your vibe attracts your tribe. It does. I mean, I met so many people in the protests over the years who
Yeah.
had lost their friendship circles, but then found new ones. And they found new ones in with people who actually resonated with what they had to say significantly more. And as a result, their lives were better. I mean, and it's sometimes scary. I understand that to potentially lose the status quo, whether that be a partner, whether that be a friendship group, a job, whatever. But that doesn't mean that's the end. And I think that's a big thing is we're at the point now where I don't think you can self-censor anymore. I think that's again what's got us in this mess because there's so many people that think differently to how they behave, but
Yeah.
they're terrified of the reaction. Like, yeah, you can apply it to the last few years. Like, how many people, for example, voted Brexit that never said they did because they were terrified their friends would react?
Exactly.
How
Exactly.
many people probably voted Reform in the last election that were terrified? How many people didn't get a COVID jab but told their friends they did? All
Yeah.
because they were just terrified of the repercussions of saying how they felt. And I think, I don't go out looking for an argument with somebody but if a topic comes up and I'm asked an opinion, I'll never censor myself. I'll always say, well, this is what I think. Doesn't mean you have to go out and have a heavy conversation every time you speak to somebody, but if ever you get asked a question, say how you really feel. If ever you're put in a situation, say how you really feel. And I remember just a personal experience going back to would have been mid 2021, right? So my best friend got married and I was his best man and I organised this stag do. And we grew up together on the Isle of Wight, but he moved to London. So all his friends in London, I didn't know. So I turned up, there was 16 of us. And I knew him and one other guy from the Isle of Wight. That's the only people I knew. And it was the weekend that was meant to be Freedom Day, 21st of June, 2021, when everything opened up. And obviously it didn't. So I had to like coordinate 16 lads across London when you can only have four here, five there. Oh, it was ridiculous. And I obviously didn't wear a mask. I refused to wear a mask. And we're getting tons of public transport, getting into nightclubs and all of that. And I was getting abuse every time from bouncers, from taxi drivers, from, conductors and all of that. And my friend said to me, he said it would have been so much easier because all these lads think you're a
Yeah,
knob. I was like, I don't really care. I don't care. I held my own because I would when I go home at the end of this weekend, if I look my kids in the eye and I know I've abandoned my principles for an easy life, I've lost a complete respect for myself at that point.
yeah,
I'm done. And I think standing up for yourself is incredibly important, whatever the consequences are, because I think self-respect is the ultimate form of respect. Other people's validation is nice sometimes, but if you don't value yourself, it's irrelevant what other people think. Hence why people can be millionaires, have, everything on a plate, but feel empty in a room full of people because they don't feel it inside. And in
mhm,
the same way, you've got people that on the surface haven't got anything, but inside they have that, real sense of self-respect, self-belief, and that attitude, and they feel like rock stars. I think that's really, really important. You've got to start with yourself because no one else's opinion matters. I mean, how many women get told they're beautiful, but they don't feel it inside, so they don't
completely.
they don't take that compliment. So I think, starting inside, having that self-respect and self-assurance that your opinion matters, and if someone else is different, it doesn't devalue what you have to say. It just means they think something different. And that shouldn't stop you from saying what you believe to be right, because history will tell you that being in the majority is usually not usually not the right side of history.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I went out to dinner with two really good friends, long-term friends that think very, very differently to me. Or I'm the cuckoo in the nest there. And when we started discussing things over dinner, they came up several times that they said, "Oh, we won't discuss that, Catherine. We're not allowed to discuss that." And I was like, "No, no, no. This is where it's complete arse about face. I am open to
Yeah.
discussing anything. You won't go there because you know my opinion's different." But I'm not trying to persuade you of anything, but I'm quite happy to give my opinion when asked. And people find that so, so triggering.
Yeah, they do.
I think personally that's one of the main issues. You said this right at the start, Jaymie, that I think a lot of people don't know what their beliefs are now, or find it so, so different to say, oh shit, I was wrong.
Yep. People
What
find
can
it
we do?
confronting.
Yeah, what can we do to help people with that? Because, I think if we're less judgmental, like we said, so many people in the alternative media are so abusive to
Yeah.
people that take different decisions to them. And I put my hand up. When I went traveling around the world when I was 21, I didn't ask about the vaccines. If they said I had to have a vaccine to get into a particular country, I did it. I was just focused on going off traveling. I didn't
Yep.
ask. And then you get ill from one or your pet does, and then you're like, shit, shit, shit. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Excuse my French. So how,
Sorry, I swore earlier.
yeah, how can we help people? How can we be the best examples for people to not be afraid to change their mind?
Well, I think there's a few different aspects to that. So, with the health one, which we spoke about previously, I think if you look good, you dress well, you look vibrant, you look happy, you look energetic, people are going to look at that and think, well, I want some. How many times do you see people go, I want some of what they've had? They look
Yeah,
great. And I think that's a great way of living. I think, if um, you're around, let's say you're by the pool in the summer with other families in on a holiday, and you're the one that's getting in there, messing around, playing with the kids, getting, it's gonna then other parents are probably gonna think, well, yeah, okay, they look like they're having fun, we'll jump in, we'll get involved, and I think you can inspire a lot of people by the way that you behave. I also think on the flip side, a lot of people can look and go, who do you think you are? You get a
yeah,
lot of that. I think people need to get rid of that envious attitude because most people that have achieved anything in their lives, whatever that achievement might be. Because for me, success is very much it's a self kind of rewarding thing. I don't have a definition for what success is apart from it's living a life that you feel meaning, that you feel purpose, and that you're happy within, whatever that might be. If that's, driving a bus and going to the football on a Saturday, having a few beers, coming home, whatever. if that's what success is to you and you're happy and you're fulfilled, you're a winner as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. So, but for me, anyone that has any form of success, they've worked at it. They've not been handed it. Whether that be anyone that's got a six pack on the beach, they've worked for months to achieve that. Anyone that's got a successful business, a successful marriage, successful parents, you've worked really hard to achieve those things. I think that attitude that people have of look at what they've got, what they just got handed that. They probably didn't. Very few did. So I think people that look at others that they would like the life of, I think actually going rather than looking at that with envy, I'm going to look and go, okay, how did they do that? What did they do to achieve that? And I'm going to copy that blueprint and see if I can get to the same. I think that would change a hell of a lot. And I think the other thing you talked about there about the abuse that a lot of people face and a lot of division is I think what we need to basically do is sell something that's better than what they're being sold by the system. And
Yeah.
I think that's becoming increasingly easier because the system is basically selling you that you're going to work till you drop, especially now. Like I'm 32. I know full well things like state pension are not going to be there in 30 odd years when I get there. They're not. You're going to be working till you drop. Um, you're earning less while paying more for things that are not as good, whether that be your house, your bills, your food, all of those things. Just nothing works. Yeah, it's costing you significantly more. You're being taxed more. The streets are less safe. The food
Yeah.
is of lower quality. The education's of lower quality. Um, while at the same time you're seeing, homelessness rise, you're seeing so many things rise. You're seeing, young lads come across in dinghies getting put up in hotels while, veterans and elderly people that have paid into the system are on the streets. The unfairness of it is just so, so high. That's all they're selling. So I don't think we're pushing on a closed door now with people to say that that ain't working, is it? Because I can tell the difference now just since I left school at 16 to now in the last
Oh, yeah.
in the last 17 years, the difference. What's it going to be like in another 10, another 15, another 20? So I think particularly with younger people, that's why I brought up the woke ideology earlier, because they come into this category I'm talking about. They're looking going, well, this doesn't look good.
Yeah.
No, we're never going to be able to buy a house. We're never going to be able to travel. We're never going to be able to do this, that, and the other. I've lived in this city for 10 years. We're going into the cinema after this. We're going to park right next to it and we're going to walk straight in. And I'm going to have my wits about me with the family
Yeah.
every second we're in there because it's just not the same place anymore. Um, People are open, I think. I think we just need to put down the division and the fault lines of maybe why we think it is the way it is and what we see as the solution and just go, okay, it's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working. So let's sit down, let's have a sensible conversation about how we can change it because the people that are there to supposedly make our lives better are not doing that. So I think that's how I would start is um look at those people who at the moment maybe don't agree, but agree something's not right. Because nobody's life's getting better right now, apart from
No.
a very, very finite few. Everybody, I'd say everybody in the street here that I live in is probably poorer than they were 2 years ago. They probably feel more on edge than they did 2 years ago. And they're probably more concerned about the future, especially when it comes to the lives that their kids may have, whether that be the fear of an impending global war all the time, or a financial crash, or food shortages, whatever it might be. People are more concerned about the future than they were previously. So, with that, I think comes a huge opportunity where if we are selling something different, metaphorically selling, I mean, that
Mm.
actually the world doesn't need to be like this. If we simply put down the lines that divide us, which we can go back to arguing about later, because the only way that this system remains in control is if it keeps us divided, keeps us arguing about what colour skin you have and what God you believe in and what football team you support and how many zeros you've got on your salary. If we just put those to one side and say, actually, if we just focus on one thing, which is to make the world a better place, make the country a better place. There's 650 MPs for 72 million people. They've got no power unless we continue to give it to them. So I would start there, and I think you can do a lot on a very local level. That's how I
Yeah.
would start it on a very local level, where people in the street, people in the town, people in the village just look after their own, start supporting their own community initiatives, which I think is how things used to be. a very long time ago. People used to, work in their tribes and the tribes would work
Yeah.
together to create a better outcome. I think that would be a great start. I mean, how many people now even know their neighbors' names? How many
Oh,
people know the people that
completely.
they live next to?
Yeah, completely. And I think how many people support their local farmers, their local shops, their
Massive, yeah.
tradespeople. Keep the money, just like you want to keep the money in the family, keep the money in the community, keep the
Yeah.
work in the community, keep the support in the community. Because for me, what the biggest thing that came out of 2020, one of the biggest things, were people stopped admiring the lawyers, the
Yeah.
professionals, and they were like, I want someone that can grow food. I want someone that can
Yeah.
mend fences. I want someone that can, get a well up and running for me. The practical real life skills really came back into their own. And I think there's such a huge movement in homesteading now, in home education, in sort of stepping outside the system. And I think that's only really positive.
Yeah, I agree. You make the systems that we don't like obsolete.
Yeah,
These mainstream. I remember reading a statistic years ago, and it was to do with Coca-Cola. If no one bought Coke for 2 days, they'd go bankrupt.
exactly.
The power that we have with just money, the power that we have with what we spend our money on is huge. Like in America, $2.70 in every $10 spent in America is spent on Amazon.
Wow.
So you just immediately you get rid of that, or you at
Yeah,
least reduce it. They're going to feel the hit. Like as we've seen over the last few years, there's 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 a lot of mainstream big corporations that are struggling all of a sudden.
yeah,
You go down to lots of different towns. How many Costas are closing?
yeah.
Because
Thank God.
people are turning their back on it. Whereas I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the same where you live. There's actually quite a lot of local independent coffee houses opening up, which is amazing.
I can't
Um,
believe how many there are around we are. My
yeah,
husband and I were having the conversation. We were like, I can't believe how they can keep going. But what I clicked on me is one, so many people are working from coffee houses now because the offices have closed down and they don't want to just be stuck at home all day on their own. And also people are using it as a point of community. I mean, I went
yeah,
and met a friend for a coffee the other day and we got talking to some local people and one of the ladies told me about a local butcher where I can get some really good quality safe meat for my animals. And I told her about another little shop that does all lovely natural products. And so we're spreading the word round in their community. So I did see it in a different light. I want to finish by your daily habits, Jaymie, because
okay,
discipline to me has gone out the window for a lot of people. It's very, and I understand why, because when you're poisoned, when you're broke, when you're stressed, when you think that you can't make a difference, it's very, very difficult to sort of sum up that energy to take a step. But how important is discipline for you and your family? And to demonstrate that, give us a little bit of some
yeah.
of your core daily, weekly, monthly habits that are non-negotiables for you.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I haven't always been disciplined at all. Really, the last probably 3 years, I've been very disciplined on my fitness and health. More so since I've had kids, because I want to be around, have some longevity. So that's what's inspired that. So I kind of have like a mental tally chart, right? So if you think you start your day and your level, there's nothing on it. And on one side, every time you do something that's going to be of benefit to yourself, whether that be today, tomorrow, whatever, so a short-term situation, or a long-term, like a brick in something you're building, let's say, you tick on one side. Every time you do something negative, you do the same on the other side. And then at the end of the day, in your brain, you just, and I don't have this formula, I don't write it down. I literally just have it in my brain at the end of the go, right, how many did I make more positive decisions today than negative ones? And I think for a lot of people, the morning is where it falls apart
Yeah,
because the second you get up, essentially you're starting afresh, you're starting blank. In theory, depending what you've done the night before, might depend how you feel when you get up. But the decisions you make when you get up are very, very important. So for me, really simple morning routine. I don't touch my phone. My phone's on flight mode on the other side of the room. I will touch it to flick the alarm off. That's it. Don't even turn flight mode off. Don't check my emails. Don't do anything. So I get up at 4:30. I get
wow.
up. I have a bottle of water immediately. The second I get up, then I'll go downstairs, have some lemon water with some salt, some electrolytes. Do a few breathing exercises, which I started doing about a year ago, and it's changed my life massively in terms of my asthma. I used to have asthma. I don't really suffer with it at all anymore. Might need an inhaler if I do some really, really intense exercise, but not generally. Whereas before, I'd be ill once a year I'd have some kind of lung or chest infection. Every time it was cold, I'd need the inhaler. That's all gone as a result of doing this. So I'll do that and then I'll do some form of exercise. So if the weather's okay and it's not really bad, I mean, it gets quite cold up here in the winter, but if it's not really bad, I'll always try and get that first exercise of the day outside.
Yeah.
So at the moment, what I'll do now it's nice and sunny or warm, I'll try and either get out for a run. And a big one I've started doing is going out, getting first light on your skin. So if it's not too cold, I'll get out in the morning, just in a pair of shorts and some running shoes, have your shirt off, get some early morning sun onto your skin. I'll do that, maybe like a 30-minute run, come back, shower, go to work. And immediately there, you've started the day with a few positive decisions. And that tally chart you've got, right, I've hydrated myself immediately. I've not touched technology. I've got outside. I've got into nature. I've burned some calories, done some breathing. Right, you've hit like 3 or 4 points on that chart straight away there, which is a great way to start your day. And I think also, if you struggle with discipline with exercise, getting it out the way and done
Oh,
is
so
a
true.
great thing because you don't know what day you're going to have at work. You might go to work and it's a really, especially if you work in like a manual job where it's physically quite demanding, you might be really tired come the end of the day, or you might have some kind of day where there's a lot of stresses or circumstances have come up which just make it easy for you to then, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym on the way home.
Mm.
Um, whereas you get it in and get it out the way, and what that also does is it starts your day with such positivity that you actually find that you want to then eat really well through the day because well, what's the point in the run I did this morning if I have a takeaway at lunchtime? What's the point in if I have a bottle of wine at the end of the day? I might as well have not bothered running. So I would say that's a really important place to start. Most people probably start the day by picking up their phone,
Yeah.
going on social media, probably seeing something negative because that's just what it's full of. All that blue light straight away onto your eyes. Your eyes haven't woken up naturally. It's a really terrible way to start the day. So I'm trying to hold back a cough.
Yeah. No, don't go for it. Yeah.
So then I go to work and I'll spend 7, 8 hours at the office, and then I took the time to invest into a home gym. So I converted my garage into a gym in January, mainly so that I could train at the weekends without having to leave the house, and I can get in there and not have to lose too much family time, and my wife can train with me as well. So I'll go in there usually about 4 o'clock, do an hour of weights, and then come home. And the big one, which we started doing. When I walk in, put my phone on the side and don't touch it until my kids are asleep.
Oh, I love that.
So you have, that time that's uninterrupted. And it's not, I'd love to have more time in the week with my children than I do. Probably have, 2 hours, let's say, from when I walk in the door. We'll have dinner together, all of it, all four of us, and chat about whatever has gone on that day. And then, yeah, kids to bed, family time, play some games, read some book. My oldest son's just started all the phonics books reading, so he might read as a story, and then maybe have an hour at the end of the day. Me and Beth will watch something or chat or you know whatever, and bed by about 9:30 usually.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of reading. I'm not great with reading. I've have to kind of really remind myself to do it. Um, but yeah, and that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. I do my best to, when I'm in the house, not be thinking about work, not be thinking about anything else, just spending time with the family. Like this morning, what are we at 9? So yeah, I got up at 5 this morning, a little bit later because it's bank holiday. I went to the gym, did an hour, came back, and I've been playing racing cars with my son Travis, and then do this, and then we'll go to the cinema today and have a day out and go to the garden. There's a little farm shop near us with a lovely
Love it.
kids play area. We'll go and spend the afternoon there, have some lunch and enjoy the sunshine. But I think your daily routine is really key to have any kind of consistency because obviously I could speak more to probably the fitness side of it than
Yeah.
the health in particular. But people talk about motivation. I need motivation to join the gym. Need motivation to eat well. Motivation is actually irrelevant in many ways. It's about discipline. It's And you can apply that to anything in life. It's doing it when you don't want to do it. That's when that will get you somewhere. If you only went to the gym, or if you only ate well, or if you were only, even down to something really obscure, if you were only romantic when you felt the motivation to do so, you're not going to do it very often. You're probably not going to change, very often. Whereas if you are consistent, day in, day out, week in, week out, you will achieve more. If you did a 5 hour gym session once a month, let's say, because you were motivated, you went in there, you did 5 hours, someone who does 10 minutes a day every day will be better than you because of just that consistency. And I think that that's where we need to get the mindset to is that consistency, that discipline of um, and again, it probably comes back to self-respect. So if I say I'm going to do something, if I write it down in my daily planner, this is what I'm doing tomorrow. I literally feel dreadful if for some reason I don't do it, even if it's
Yeah,
outside of my control for whatever reason. Um, if I say I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and run, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and run, or I'm going to be spending the whole morning talking myself down like when we were leading up to me and Beth getting married, I remember I used to have to say to her that just say whatever you have to say in the morning to get me out of bed to go and run. Call me whatever you have to call me. Tell me I'm a waste of space. Whatever it takes to get me to
yeah.
move. Um, Now, fortunately, I've got quite a lot of discipline, and it's most mornings you don't fancy a 4 a.m. alarm, 4:30 alarm, but as soon as you're up and you get it done, you feel great afterwards. So. You don't have to do that for very long, I don't think, before you start to see the benefits, and then that'll just take care of itself.
It's so true. Discipline's a skill that you learn, and I think if people realize that, because so many people say, oh, it's all right for you. And it's like, no, everyone can do this, but you just got to make a decision to start. I love that.
Yeah, and it's not easy, it's
No,
not easy. I wake up most mornings aching because of
yeah,
a session you've done the day before, or and but you choose your hard.
yeah,
Life is tough. Not being able to walk or climb the stairs or do your own grocery shopping when you're 70 years old is equally as difficult. So
absolutely.
the decisions you make now, the better you look after yourself when you're young, will directly impact your future. Of course they will, unless you're very unlucky. Obviously, of course, there's anomalies.
Mm,
There's triathletes that have dropped dead at 25, and there's
yeah.
smokers that have lived till they're 90. There's anomalies, of course, but overwhelmingly, if you look after yourself now, you're gonna live a better life later on. And as well as what we spoke about earlier, you setting that example for your children and others around you, that's brilliant also for yourself, for your future self. They will thank you for the decisions that you make right now. So there's lots of benefits for you and for others of taking care of yourself and of being your true self. If you've got six friends and they're all overweight and one of them loses weight and joins the gym and looks great, gets healthy, the other five are going to take notice, and
Yeah, they will.
you're going to inspire them just by being yourself.
I love it. And final question, and then I'll let you get off with your family, is for those people listening today, it can seem very overwhelming when you start realizing what's really going on in the world. So if people are going to start deprogramming themselves, what's one thing that you could say they could start on today to sort of change their trajectory?
I'd get a piece of paper and write down, make three columns. What can I control and make a change to today? What can I control that's going to take a little bit longer, and what's out of my control? And then above that, I'd write the things in your life that you don't like, and then assign them to different categories. And let's say, for example, you woke up today, you felt hungover, you felt tired, you felt sluggish. Right, okay, that's your diet and your choices. You can start today to make a difference to that. Let's say you don't like your job and you want to change your career and either earn more money or find another career to find more purpose. Okay, that's going to take a little bit longer. So you put that in that category. Okay, there's this conflict in the Middle East that I'm worried about. Okay, that's not in your control. Doesn't mean you're not aware of it. Doesn't
Mm,
mean you don't talk about it and highlight it to people. But as of today, that's not directly within your control. And I would do that. And I'd start with the things that you can influence, that you can make the changes to right now. Because all you've got to do is start there. And then that second category becomes more prevalent. And then by the time you get to the point that you've only got stuff in category three,
mm.
you're doing pretty well. And then you can start to put your time and energy into how you can make some kind of change to that, whatever that might be. Because I think people look at stuff and get overwhelmed because they look at it as, I hate everything about my life. I don't like this. I don't like that. And they see it as one grand thing they have to fix today. You're probably not going to do that. But if you just start somewhere, and by doing that sort of graph, if you like, and looking at what you can influence directly, immediately, And there's so many things related to that. It doesn't just mean your health. Let's say you're in a marriage where you've grown apart. Well, you can have that initial conversation about, come on, you can have that today. You can have that
Yeah,
right now. You can make that difference. If you've got a disconnection with your kids, go downstairs now and say, right, let's go out today. Me and you, let's go and have lunch. Let's go and talk. Let's go and do this. You can make an impact on that immediately without needing a grand plan. Because most things in life that you want to change just need time and energy and a real desire to change them. There's obviously exceptions to that, but for most things that people don't like about their lives, those three things will make a change to them. So I do that. That's how I would begin. Is what can I influence
yeah.
today and start there.
That is such brilliant advice. That's going to be my next task today with my cup of tea. Thank you so much, Jaymie. I love having these conversations with you. Obviously, you've got so much knowledge in these areas, but most importantly, you're actually walking the talk. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
Take care. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.